Thinking about how the new built environment vision meets global strategy? Wondering what really activates $100 billion Bahamas? Pause. Think about it with intentional thought and consider where we go from here. This week, something to think about is linked up with a Bahamian diplomat and strategist, Lester R. Cox, all the way live in China. We're going to break down how platform strategy, sovereign leverage, and diplomatic clarity, the keys for transforming Freeport, Nassau, and Inagua into economic powerhouses, those fancy zones. And then we're going to dive into what he coins as the Bridge Nation Doctrine, the role of the diplomatic corps, and what it takes for we, the people, to not just survive, but to benefit or profit from this generational reset.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About. This is Dale Happy Knowles, and here this evening we have on the screen the one and only Lester R. Cox, the radio personality, now diplomat extraordinaire all the way in China, and sacrificing some time to be with us. But we can just 2 different time zones. Welcome, Lester. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Now, we sponsored by Dom Dev Enterprises and Page Investments. And, this evening we're going to touch base on some deep stuff that we always talk about, changing the narrative. And I know what you have to learn is going to change the narrative here in the Bahamas. But first, Lester, you have one VV name here. I think it says Wu Wei. Is that correct?
Yes, you've got your Chinese pronunciation perfect. It's called Wu Wei. Yeah, Wu Wei. It's a Chinese name that really means go with the natural flow of whatever you're doing.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So there's a natural flow for wealth. There's a natural flow for good relationships. There's a natural flow for nature. There's a natural flow for everything. And Wu Wei is symbolic of that. The name just reminds me of how you have to think when you enter a culture like China or Asia. This is one of 3 or 4 great civilizations. So when you're in China, you're not just in a country, you are in a civilization. And Westerners tend to forget that because, in the West, we focus on a couple of things. We focus on God is number one. We focus on human rights. We focus on everybody can be president. Everybody, my child could be the leader. And so when you step into this kind of culture, you've gotta like almost suspend what you believe, because number one, the West is, the whole Western culture is, like 1492. This culture has been around for 6,000 years.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Correct. And so we have to open our mind. And so Wu Wei is all about understanding the fundamental nature of Eastern culture, which is a concept they call Da Ra 4. Da means the Tao, how things actually works in nature and life. Mm-hmm. Ra is how you interact with the Tao, personally. And then 4 is how people organize their society. And so the way they organize in the East is totally different than the way we organize in the West. We focus around democracy. That's not their thing.
Right.
And we've got to learn to respect it.
Yeah, awesome. And that's what our good book always teaches us to do, is to respect others, and so forth. Sometimes we get mixed up with that, and we think what we believe is right, and nobody is entitled to believe what they believe. But just to touch on it now, from the little, I shouldn't say the little, but the diving into the introduction that you gave me on this doctrine, then let me just change screens here. And I lost you again. I don't know why that happens, but so this mindset inspired some to think about, to believe that so much of what we inherit was built to benefit others. But what if we could design a Bahamas that benefits us first, on purpose? And so, in reading through all your stuff, this is what came to my mind as to if I could encapsulate it for a simple thing. So, what I want to know though is, what was your thought process in coming up with the approach that you have towards what you're going to put on the table today, the doctor?
Right. Well. I've always, I am a student of leadership, and I'm a student of history. When you look at what we have done in the Bahamas, for instance, we had internal self-government, we had Constitution Day, we had majority rule, we had the money change, we had independence, and then we had Black people actually running the civil service. When you look at those critically important things, you see something that's just obvious if you pay attention. What's obvious is the more people you bring into the game, the larger and quicker your economy grows. So every time we did something massive and we got more people involved, our economy doubled in 6 years. Right. And so if you want your country to keep growing, you've got to keep doing important things. Can you imagine how important it was for us to have internal self-government? You can imagine how big that leap was. Even though that internal self-government was controlled by the white minority, it didn't matter. The point is that was linked to the Bahamas. It's correct. And similarly, when that minority group got the power, they saw something that was just obvious. They saw something that was happening in the world. And you know what was happening in the world? Our trade was shifting from the Europeans, from the UK to North America. And they made the move. They realized, hey, this is happening in the world. We've got to make the move. And so we've got a clear history in the Bahamas of when we see trends that are happening in the world, and when we act on them, and when we move on them, the country grows and the people grow. And we've got to keep doing that. And so you can imagine, we shift from the UK running things to internal self-government. That's a big shift. And then when we took over, we realized there's a trend happening in the world. Our trade is primarily with North America. So we switch our money. Can you imagine those two huge things? What would be the equivalent today of those two big moves? Boy, I tell you, and I think we have to think about that. And then when another trend started happening in the world, we started to see people like Martin Luther King. They started to talk about human rights and the importance of democracy and the vote. That was a trend that was happening in the world. The Bahamas latched onto that trend, and guess what? Majority rule started to happen, right? And when majority rule started to happen, then ordinary Black people took over the government, and guess what happened? Again, the economy doubled, and the economy doubled just because a new set of leaders took over and started to do more things for the majority.
So that's the majority who took over, And so when you come on that same line that you were talking about, the one thing I could think about was when we moved the cellular environment from postpaid to include prepaid. And we had 5,000 odd subscribers that was put in place for almost 10 years. But when we went to prepaid, we almost had double that in the space of 2 weeks.
Happy, can you imagine that? Just one simple move. I remember when Leon and you guys at BTC, people were asking, look, what they need to market for? This is a monopoly. And it just became obvious over time the genius that you guys were operating from.
We can get there. So let's dive into some of this stuff now, because but before we go, my conception as to what the nation doctrine is about. Is this accurate? The Bridge Nation doctrine that you have, right?
What's your conception about it?
But I'm saying here in the quote, but I'm saying here that so much of our inheritance was built for others, but for what you are doing, then we could now be building this for ourselves. This is a purposeful act to build wealth for ourselves, in particular, and empowerment.
Right. Yeah. You know, it goes back to paying attention, Happy. When you pay attention to what's happening in the world, it becomes obvious what you need to do.
Okay.
What's happening in the world right now is the world is fracturing into economic zones. So some people, they inaccurately are saying that globalization is dead or the world is deglobalizing. That's not true. The world is not deglobalizing. What the world is doing is the world is splitting itself up into fractions. So you've got the Europeans, you've got the Americans, you've got the Chinese, you've got BRICS, you've got Latin America, you've got the Middle East, and you've got Africa. These are all economic zones, and some of these economic zones are really thinking about their particular situation, and they're developing systems for their situation. So
Right.
the current system that we have right now is really based on the Bretton Woods system that happened after World War II, where
Right.
the world was in chaos, and we needed the UN, we needed the IMF, we needed some institutions, we needed the dollar to stabilize things. Today, we are in a different world. People are asking these fundamental questions again, and when they ask the questions, they are coming up with answers that is just different than what we used to.
Right.
And this is what you're saying. You're saying this multipolar world, and we've got to learn how to respond. So if the Americans, the Chinese, and the Europeans, if they are thinking about their particular interests and they are actually creating tariffs and they're creating roadblocks to interact with each other, then we're going to need bridge nations like ours. We're going to need bridge nations like Singapore and Dubai and Turkey and all these, Switzerland, all these places. And this is what the Bahamas can become in this new multipolar environment.
Right. So now let's put this in perspective for everybody. This graph that I have on the screen, this pie chart, is not accurate. So people don't walk around and think that it's expected to be for numbers specific. It's just to illustrate how much dependency we have on one sector, right? And a lot of this, as you mentioned, is for the old school of the way we would have approached building wealth and building a nation and so forth, right? And so when we look at that, and then what I came up with during COVID as to how we need to change moving forward, and now you seem to be potentiating with the basis that I have for this and putting it into overdrive as to how we could actually make this happen in a bigger way globally than just locally, right? And so when we talk about the new built environment, we're talking about generational sustainability and so forth. So when we look at that now and we start talking about the issue of establishing the difference between where we are now and where we want to go, one of the things that people pushed back to me when they saw the title and so forth was the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement and the Bridge Nation. And they wanted to know what's the difference, because we have a Hawkesbury Creek Agreement that was for the Bahamas, even though we only applied it to Grand Bahama or Freeport Lucay area per se. But I think that again is in one dimension, whereas what you're talking about is in a different dimension altogether. So how would you answer that?
Well, the way I would think about it this way, the Bahamas is a country that's spread over 120,000 square miles. I want you to just think about that. We are spread from Grand Bahama to Bimini in the north, all the way down to Inagua. So we occupy a huge territory when you think about it. And so we've got to think about that territory in the context of who we are. The
Right.
Bahamas is the only tri-point nation in the Western Hemisphere, meaning that we give you access to three places. We give you access to the east coast of North America,
Mm-hmm.
which include the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
Then we give you access to the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
and then we give you access also to the east coast of South America. Right?
Right.
No other country in the hemisphere gives you that. Show me one. And so we have to now think about that and not just focus on just one side of the equation, which is we've been just focused on North America. But if we start to focus on that tri-point, where,
Right.
all right, no problem. Our number one trading partner is the United States. That's where we get our tourism from. That's where we get our huge cruise industry from. And this is where we keep our dollar 1-to-1 because we keep those US dollars flowing through our economy. That's good.
Right.
We ought to keep doing that. But we also ought to consider what we can do with the 30 million people in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
We've got on our southern border, we've got Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, Jamaica. And if we were to just triangulate those 3 or 4 countries in the southern Bahamas, there's an economy there that will rival very quickly our financial services sector. That's very easy to do if we think about it. And I mean, a real example would have been when the Haitian government offered the Bahamian government the opportunity to take over the cellular network in their country.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we looked at that. We just say, oh man, that's a bunch of poor people. We're not interested in that.
Well, you mean, yeah. That was pushed far, and then it stopped. It just fell off.
Right. No. I'm not talking about the employees. I'm talking about the policymakers. The policymakers at the time, they can see the obvious. Right. And even today, we don't see the obvious because the trade between Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba, if we were to just focus on just data communication, just linking those economies, helping them with infrastructure, we could grow our southern Bahamas in ways that would just blow our mind. And I'm not even looking at South America yet.
Right.
The point is, if we created a southern economic zone for the Bahamas, that's good. That would be incredible. And so we should leave pretty much Grand Bahama. Let the port do what they want to do, but we should create another port for the whole of Grand Bahama where we try to link Grand Bahama to West Palm Beach and let that grow naturally. And then what we do in the Central Bahamas, which would include New Providence and Andros, is we turn that into a financial services economic zone for Black wealth and the whole world.
Okay.
Buddy, your 100 billion economy will look tiny if we want to just think about that.
And that place where the two of us was before, I still think a lot of people in there don't believe that 100 billion is easy, because even one of the most aggressive thinkers in politics was in a sports chat with me, and he was highlighting or questioning certain things. And I granted that he wants credibility of data in order to see how this could happen. But to me, just off the top of your head, by looking at something differently, you should be able to tell that, this little $12 billion economy we have, we're not scratching the surface, because tourism by itself could be a $40 billion economy, if you ask me. We don't even touch what happens with the cruise ships as we should, right? So
right. But let me just stop you there for one quick second. Look at what has been happening recently. We went from 6 million to almost 11 million overall tourists just by allowing a group of people to run the port. I want you to just think about that for a moment, right? Whether you agree with the deal or not, that's irrelevant. Right. The point is, the numbers, they were always there. You just needed a different kind of leadership who saw saw that business differently.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, the potential of the Bahamas. Look where, and we don't need to go to the geography thing altogether, but just where we sit. I always say the Bahamas is Eden. They didn't name Paradise Island wrong, right? It's still paradise for people who reaping from it, but it's really Eden. And that's a different topic for a different day. But everything about the Bahamas sits in the right spot. They got to pass us to ship where they want to ship. That's one of the major pathways, etc. And they got flyovers. It's all kind of different things we need to tackle into. So, as we talk about these things now.
So Dale, stop there, right? Think about that for a moment. All you have to do is visualize the flyover traffic of the Bahamas. Just visualize that, and it shows you how important we are. Also, just visualize the boating traffic that comes to the Bahamas, whether it's pleasure or cargo. It's just incredible. And then if you visualize the data, the undersea cables that connects North and South America and the Caribbean, all of those things are flowing through the Bahamas, and we are not even thinking about them. They are like invisible infrastructure to us.
Yeah, and we have some stimulus in our economy who is pushing to try and get sensitivity to these things, and some people are moving, but they're not moving fast enough. For at least not as fast as would be used to move in the early days of telecoms. Right. So you call this a generational reset. What exactly is being reset, and why must small nations like the Bahamas shift how they operate in the world?
Well, the reason why this is a generational reset is because for the first time in our lifetime, people are asking questions about how we should organize the world. And they're coming up with answers that is not consistent with what we've always believed. So this generational reset is really causing a problem because people are asking the question. Just like during majority rule, we ask the question, you're like, why should a small minority group run this country? Or why the majority can't run it, right? And when you start asking questions like that, the mindset shift. And so the world is shifting now into this system where people are saying, man, we ain't organizing the world for your convenience. We want to play in this space as well. And so people are asking questions like, what institutions should run the world? What institutions should dominate commerce with financial services? Just look at Europe. Just look at how the Europeans have terrorized the Bahamas over the last 20 years. Just think about that. I mean, they have really terrorized them. They've asked us to do things, and when we did them, they just kept moving the goalposts. Right?
Yeah, blacklisting.
And our response was always childish in the sense that we just kept believing that if we did what they said, that it would be okay. Yeah. We didn't say, okay, man, this is a big world. What we should begin to do is we should begin to make them less important. We never made that move. And
that's what I was saying, because this administration might not have taken that stance, but at least they've taken the stance to try to debunk this issue of justifying blacklisting, right? And some of the things that they do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, correct. But what's important is you have to be strategic. So look at what happened when the same thing happened to, say, China or Japan in the 1990s when Ronald Reagan was putting tariffs on them and trying to contain them. They made other moves around the world. In fact, the tariffs, the Ronald Reagan tariffs against Japan, where they was trying to stop them in technology, they were trying to stop them in steel, they were trying to stop them in car production. All that did was that made Japanese industry stronger. Tariffs don't really hurt anybody except the person who applying the tariffs. And so you see when the same thing happened to China, China started to interact with the rest of the world. They say, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, they started to make their number one trading partner less important. So today, the United States as a percentage of Chinese overall exports is only 13%. I want you to just think about that for a moment. And some people have it down to 12%. You're going from the most important thing in my world to 13%. So that means there was always a huge opportunity all around the world. And you decided to tap into it. This is what we need to do with respect to what's happening with us and financial services in Europe. Europe, in the context of the whole world, is a small, well, I won't say a small market, but Europe in the context of the whole world is not It's not the end all and be all for us.
Yeah, so that's why I asked the question about the generational reset, because I was hoping you would say that, okay, yeah, these are things that need to happen, but the generational reset this is not the mentality of old school persons. Let me put it that way, right? So we need that attitude change, that mindset change, and so that's gonna come with more thinkers and stuff like that in policymakers, etc., to try
And
and help
business.
drive. And the business people has to drive, causing the change in the policymakers to be thinkers, right? Because it's them
Correct.
who come up with the money to fund these election campaigns. Yeah.
No question about it. But it's also all about exposure. This is a big world, Happy. The global economy is over $100 trillion. I want you to just think about that for a moment.
Right.
Is $100 trillion. And we know what happens when people get rich in any environment. When they become wealthy, they want to travel, they want to own second homes, they want to have more personal freedom. Do you know, when you think about this whole world, there is no real territory for black wealth. There is no place where people of color can just go and be themselves and just be relaxed, right? The Bahamas should be one of those places.
Yep. That's why I call it the Eden, right? Because it's situated right for almost everything. We got all these islands, 1,400,000 square miles. Or what is it? I forget what the number is. But we almost the size of California or the whole Caribbean together as one country, right?
Hey,
And
and,
so
and they are
we
not.
could-
And not only that, when you think about our geography in terms of ocean, we've got the ocean flats
Yeah.
to really get into marine agriculture in a way that no other country can do. We can do marine agriculture with nature.
Right, and that's a part of the new built environment. That's why I said that's one of the pillars, the sea. Of coming up with these shark safaris and these flats you talk about, and what Smith down and Andrews is be talking about all the time. So, these are the things that we need to change, and that's why we keep saying, let's change the narrative 242, right? And so, how do we ensure this strategy empowers the nation, though? Not just another elite or external interest group. How do Bahamians own it this time? Because
Yeah, I don't want. I want to be careful. When they're not responsible, they always say things easy. Things are not easy.
Right.
What I know though is that this country belongs to Bahamians. Bahamians should be first in this environment. When you go in anybody's environment, the citizens should have the number one. The citizens should be number one. If you're living in my environment and there's a conflict, you should rest assured that conflict is going to be resolved in my favor mostly, unless it's just purely egregious. This is how we ought to organize the Bahamas as well. Bahamas for Bahamians first. Right? When we approach it from that mindset, and we start to think about the opportunities, you don't want to. I think a huge thing that we have in the Bahamas is Bahamians are generally marginalized in a lot of ways, and that's because we have so many. We've got so many gatekeepers. So many. It's just unbelievable the amount of gatekeepers. It's annoying just to even talk about them. But we've got to open up our system. We've got to make it easy to form businesses. We've got to watch our regulations, especially around the built environment. We've got to be very careful where we having these silly rules where after 25 lots you have to put in the sewer system. We've got to be very careful, and we've got to let people come up with ideas, and we've got to respond to them.
Yeah.
Correct. And I would say, and a lot of policymakers don't agree with me on this point, but I think they are wrong. When majority rule happened, the majority of people trusted the political parties with their democracy.
Yeah.
right? The political parties, when they got the power, they never trusted the people. They never gave that power back to the people. So the people gave them the power and they never gave it back. Our next
But
evolution is where
the people
the
get it.
people get that power back, and that power would come in the communities where we have city government, we have free ports, where we don't have to ask no central authority to make certain things happen. If you just look at the new guys who run in the port, they came with a vision. The Bahamas
Right.
government, all the successive governments didn't have that vision. We've always had that port, right? If we allowed different groups of Bahamians to run different sectors in our Bahamas with the appropriate power, there.
Yeah,
Let me
but
just
Lester,
let me just
the
put it to
thing. Go ahead.
let me just put it to you this way. Our economy doubled every 6 years when we did big things.
Yeah.
If we had just kept doubling our economy all the way up to 2025, we would have almost $100 billion economy right now.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with
I think
that.
it would be at about 78 billion.
Yeah, we talk about that before, right? So one of the things is what you just said, but when you say we never did, right? I would push back on that slightly because from my situation as the way I sat socially and work-wise, etc., the Bahamas, knowing, for example, that when we went to independence, you had the majority rule, you had the unions, etc., all sort of formulated an agreement with the Bahamas government so they could move the Bahamas forward. And then they had to do that away after maybe I think it's a decade or so because people started to stray. And that always happens, right? When if you just leave people to their own and don't have feedback for accountability and stuff like that, then people will stray instead of following the course which you need to happen, right? So I would say that the Bahamas' biggest challenge back then would have been to build the foundation and infrastructure as to where we were going. And in that process, it got corrupted and went astray from what was the rule. But I wouldn't say it was never. Because I think the mindset of what the original founders had, etc., was solid and they were going in the right direction. And I think that is what we need now, what you were talking about. We need another set of founders, per se, to come up and to push. And my argument has been that the business sector should be more aggressive and more hands on the table in terms of forcing change or nurturing change. Let me don't say forcing change, but they are very, very much satisfied with their monies. Not all, the whole sector, but a good portion of it. And so
Yeah, a lot of
they
them.
push, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Bahamian business today, they're not even serious. They all they are is net importers. Some of these guys, they break in for lunch. They close down their business lunchtime. They're not serious people. And this is why we have to open this thing up. We've got to, for me, the Bahamas is short of 10,000 homes right now, right? I mean, if you just look at what's happening with, say, Mortgage Corporation, what they tell you, right? And then if you look at what's happening with our rooms, I think we've got, last time I checked, I think we had like 18,000 rooms. We need another 10,000 rooms. Imagine just imagine if we understood this whole economics of the hotel industry, where we're not just focused on high-end rooms, but we're allowing regular Bahamians to own Airbnbs, and we're encouraging Airbnbs. If we just increase our room inventories with 1,000 Airbnbs that Bahamians own, that's going to add almost $1 billion to the economy.
Yeah.
And that's not fantasy. We can do that with $100 million.
Yeah, so the challenge is you have thinkers like yourself, myself, etc., and others. How do you get those thinkers to have clout or to be listened to, etc., to give people the confidence that what we're saying could cause them to even be better off, right? Because people don't change if they think there's a risk, right? and so forth. So
And
when we look at
they shouldn't. And
Yeah.
they, most people, they only change when there's a crisis. You look at our neighbor to the north. Some of the craziest ideas become policy when people get trapped in not knowing what to do. So the important thing you need to do is make sure your idea on the table. So when
Yeah.
people don't have no idea, no plan, they say, "Oh, look at this! Oh, I
they
need to
grab it
plan."
in.
Right? So the
That's a
important
good
thing is
one. I can remember that one.
to make sure you have a plan on the table for what you think should happen.
Okay, so you said that we're just one or two bold national decisions away from the $100 billion economy. What are those decisions and who need them? Oh, I
Well,
read the wrong
for
question.
me, the easiest thing would be, the obvious thing would be, we need our leaders to think about the whole world, not just. We've been making our revenue as a country over the last 40 years from two places, North America and Europe. Those two places, that's not the world. We've got to open up our thinking to include the whole world. So if we just open up our thinking to include the Caribbean, South America, and Africa, our financial services industry will triple not overnight, but it will triple
I know what you mean,
if we gave the banking licenses, if we open up the environment. That's a relatively easy fix. You know how it is to open a bank account in the Bahamas?
Oh, I know. I've had 3 people just tell me over the last month who's asking me if I could help them.
Right. Banks in the Bahamas, they are not serious. Right? And so we ought to be putting pressure on our central bank to grant more banking licenses, to grant more internet banking licenses so that these fat and happy bankers in the Bahamas, they need some real serious competition. And then we need to so the first step to your question, Dale, is to get our leaders thinking about the world. The world is $100 trillion opportunity. When you see it that way, $100 billion economy is pretty small, right?
Yeah.
Singapore came to our region asking for advice. Now Singapore's economy is bigger than every single Caribbean country. You add the whole Caribbean together, they could sit in the Singapore economy and people won't even notice. Right? So first step is to see the world. The second step, I think, is to create policies where that world vision can happen amongst your regular citizens. And that is by cutting up your country into economic zones and allowing different groups to have real power in city government and in free trade zones.
Yeah.
Those two ideas
you
alone.
segue straight into the next question. So you
those two ideas alone will do it. I don't think you need to go any further.
Yeah.
For the $100 billion economy.
Yeah. So the second question was how do Freeport, NASA, and Inagua function together as the tri-zonal strategy, and how would their development directly benefit ordinary Bahamians? And you just highlighted that the policies need to be able to enable the ordinary Bahamians and so forth.
Right.
So you started to say that. So what else would you add to that?
Right. I would add that we need to make sure when these political parties, when they start doing their platform, that those platforms are informed not just with political people, but they ought to go to thinkers and start to talk about the world, because our country is really underperforming badly. We are. If you look at our growth over the last 25 years, we are underperforming. It's around 1% over the last 25 years. The global economy is doubling, right?
Yeah.
You have countries like India, China, Turkey, Indonesia, Vietnam. These countries doubled their GDP over the last 20 years. And what are we doing? We are happy if we grow by 2%, 2.5%. Yeah. It's just we are underperforming.
But we love this concept of a relay, right? And talk about all our golden girls and knights, etc. But in the Bahamas, to me, we seem to start with a campaign team that might be great at winning elections. But we don't hand the baton over to those who could manage the governments, or those who have thinking tanks, real ones, that actually have people thinking and coming up with ideas and stuff like that, similar to what some of the institutions go with, like the one with Chicago was leading, etc. And that's underfunded, if you ask me. They gotta be. We got to get to the point where we know that okay, everybody isn't have to have all ideas and all answers. There's different people for different things, right? When you build a house, you don't just go to one person and say he can be the contractor, engineer, project manager, this, that, and all that kind of stuff. Even though some people will try it, but most of the time those things don't survive, right? I think we need to get to that point where we could do that, right?
Yeah, so, I also think we need to grow up as well, in the sense that a lot of times people in bureaucracies, they get trapped into just preserving the bureaucracy and not focus on producing results or letting results happen. Do you know you only need one Bill Gates, you only need one Jack Ma. You don't need a lot of great people in your country, When you think about it,
we have them, Lester.
I'm sure we do. I mean, the Bahamas is one of the most talented.
Bahamians. We have Bahamian Bill Gates and Jobs and all them different people here. We just don't use them.
Oh, correct. No question. Just factually, the Bahamas is one of the most talented places on this planet. When you give a Bahamian the real game and you show them, hey, this is how you play it, we eventually become world class. We become a country like ours, and this is no accident, The Bahamas is the only country that I know about, a foreign country, with 2 first-round draft picks in the NBA. Just think about that for a moment. And we're not a country of tall people, right? We have on every world stage, the Bahamas is represented.
Yeah.
So the talent is here.
So what role?
When you talk,
sorry.
Let me just say one more thing. When you talk about the relay, I like to think about the relay of life. It's a never-ending game. It's like there's no such thing as a permanent winner in business. You don't win business. Business is a game that keeps going on over and over again. And the way you get in the game is with a dream. The way you get out of the game is when you get tired running, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got to think about this marathon as a game that never ends. And the way you enter this game is with a dream and with some ideas.
Yeah, when you stop learning, everything dies. So what role should the Bahamian Diplomatic Corps really be playing in this movement? I mean, you all have done wonders to me in the last 5 years, or 3 years in particular, 4 years. What is this now? I don't know. And people complain about the travel, but these travel create deals and like you say, bring back ideas and all these things are necessary to come up with this type of thought process that you were talking about today, right?
Oh yeah, let me tell you something. I think Minister Mitchell, he doesn't get enough credit for what he has envisioned over the years. I mean, I think he's been the longest serving foreign affairs minister, I think, across our country's history. He doesn't get enough credit, and what he has built in foreign affairs. First of all, it's unprecedented for a small country like ours, right? Okay. So you know how China have their Belt and Road all over the world. The Bahamas have a similar diplomatic corps. We are represented all over the world, right? We have got to now deploy that diplomatic corps. We've got to deploy that as a national asset in 2 ways. First, we've got the bilateral and multilateral situation. That's a part of diplomacy. That's very important. But we've also have to focus on commercial diplomacy. And those are 2 separate and different skills. that we've got to appreciate. We've got to encourage our nation to appreciate that. We've got to encourage our opposition to appreciate that. So when there's a change of government, we should not be starting over with a new ambassador. When there's a change of government, our commercial business continues. So we have to make sure that our commercial diplomats, they are pretty much apolitical, and they are even if they are political, they are focused on business and can work with both sides. This is very important. This is the next evolution for us, and this is, I think, where we have to create a plan. Not we, but
I know what you mean.
Somebody has to create a plan that talks to all the political parties, where we say commercial diplomacy should not be about your political friends, ambassadors, etc. Commercial diplomacy should be where we put people in place who can bring back the bacon for the Bahamas.
Right, and that's the idea, and that's why I say you're all out there creating deals and relationships, etc. And so forth.
No question. No, what we are doing in China and what's possible in China is just incredible. We're doing about 500. China and the Bahamas, we're doing about 500 million in trade right now. Right.
Okay.
A lot of that trade is we're not even collecting VAT on that. We are not asking Alibaba to collect the Bahamas government's VAT. That's one of the things that we've got to approach Alibaba on, in terms of how do we when Bahamians make purchases on that platform, just like when we make purchases on Amazon, Amazon would collect that VAT. We've got to find a way to make that happen as well. And then we've got to also find a way to. China has the largest diaspora in, I think, the history of the world, right? If the Chinese diaspora, which is about 60 million people, if that was a country, that would be the third largest country in the world in terms of their purchasing power, right? We've got to find a way to encourage our leaders at BISIX and our leaders at the central bank to start to think about how we use our central bank digital currency. So China has a central bank digital currency. We have a central bank digital currency. The Nigerians have a central bank digital currency, and we've got to look at interoperability, and we've got to look at trade. This is how countries like ours become platform countries, and they become very important. And so commercial diplomats are the ones who will make those kind of things happen in cooperation with bilateral diplomats. But it first starts with commercial diplomacy. Dale, I can tell you one thing that happened to me being in China. I was in this meeting with this Frenchman and a German, and I was just amazed at how they use commercial diplomacy. So when we think about champagne, what do you think about? When you think about champagne, you think about a drink, right?
Yeah. Other than I went to Champlain, Cégep, so I might have a little bias.
Right. So you may have a more mature perspective, but when I think about champagne, I think about a celebration. People win the NBA championship and they drinking champagne. But champagne for the French is a region in France.
Yep.
And what they want to make sure they do while they are in China and other places, they want to make sure that intellectual property is protected. They don't want people using that word on their product. Right? The same thing with and that's commercial diplomacy. That's making people understand what you're about. There's another great example. German businesses, German farmers. Chinese love pig meat, right? And Germans export some pig meat to China. When there's a problem with a German farm, say a pig gets a disease,
right?
You know what can happen? The whole production stops from Germany. The Germans say, look, man, we're commercial diplomats. We're gonna ring fence our farms. So you'll know that if there's a problem with farm A and the problem doesn't exist with farm B, you can rest assured that that we'll protect you. That's what commercial diplomats do, and we have got to double down. We've got to be serious about commercial diplomacy as well as bilateral diplomacy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this hour going by really quickly, and so I need to speed up a little bit there. So, my entire career is pivoted on building digital infrastructure and global mobility, right? So,
Right. Oh, hold on. Digital
most
infrastructure and global mobility?
yeah, because the whole
Wow.
idea what we did was when we were looking at the digital and mobile and the globalization and all that kinds. It was so that everybody could just move about and you could be able to connect and converse commerce globally, right? And so there's a little bit of mobility in that, right? So it mightn't be as much as what you are putting on the table, but most still see those things as future talk or outside the box things, right? And we shortchange ourselves. So the question I have is, from your smart city talks and sovereign strategy perspective, break down why are these now core survival tools, these digital tools, etc., for small nations and optional and not optional upgrades.
Oh, man, I can tell you, yeah, obviously you got the answer to this question. You would have a better response than I would. But I can tell you, the cell phone has become the most important device, I think, outside of, say, maybe a gun. All right. But that cell phone is the thing that connects the world. And this is why globalization is going to intensify. Because the more you have access to YouTube and
Right.
Instagram and TikTok, the more you see how other people interact. And this is what parents got to be careful about. Our kids watching YouTube, TikTok, and they're on Facebook, and they comparing the things that they're watching on Facebook. They're comparing those people to you, right? They're
Yep.
looking at how other people live in their lives. And say, why can't we live like that, right? So the cell phone, man, Dale, and this whole data, we have got to, number one, appreciate the fact that the Bahamas is one of the most connected countries in the world. But we are connected just socially. We're just playing around with our cell phone. We are not
Yeah.
we are not using our cell phone as a business, right? And we've got to start encouraging people to think about that cell phone as business. And then we've got to understand what's happening with AI. Uh, we have got to build. I've been trying to convince my friend Leon Williams, Ambassador Williams, who is the, you know, he's all things digital. I've been trying to convince him of three things. Number one is we should make sure that all of our cell phone numbers are permanent. They're owned by us and not by the cell phone companies. When you give me a number, that's my number for as long as I want it. Right. The second thing I've been talking to Mr. Williams about is we have got to build our own AI in the Bahamas. So we've got to start to collect our own data on our citizens, data on what's happening in tourist information here, so that we have a quality internet exchange point between North America, South America, and the Caribbean. So we should build 2 or 3 of those exchange points right here. Dale, I think if we did that, and we have I don't think we need like more than one data center for our whole context.
And there's been discussions on all of those things, just Lester, but that's why I said earlier, yeah, there's some movement for these things, but it isn't fast enough. The people don't gather, they don't grasp the fact that the telecommunications now, the electronic communication sector, turns over every 3 to 6 months.
Can you imagine?
Right? And we don't operate at that speed. Because you just talk about the banking, how long it takes you to get a bank account. So it's like we're comfortable with the slowness. Yeah.
Right. But Dale, this is where people, you come in, you've got to make sure that your ideas are clearly documented so that when policymakers get stuck, they're going to pull out your document. You've got to put that on the table. You know what's happening with manufacturing in the world? You know why companies why American companies and a lot of even a lot of European companies, you know why they're having trouble keeping up with the Chinese? A lot of them are stuck in these 3 to 5 year production cycles. Because China operates on platforms, these guys can change a car within 2 to 3 months. Whereas in the West, we stuck on a 3 to 5 year cycle. This is just a new way to manufacture and a new way to think about innovation.
Yeah, they know what we used to call in communications when we went to people, and then all of a sudden we went to alphanumeric people, and then we went to SMS on cell phones and stuff, and we intentionally cannibalized the other service, right? Because we know what the benefit was by getting there fast. Whereas what we tend to do, what you're talking about, these 3 to 5 year cycles, is like what the guy told me when I went to Bell Labs in '88 or thereabouts. And I asked him why the 60-inch plasma is on the wall. After he explained to me what it was, bright color, Lester, when the man turned the thing on. 1988, right? He dusted it off. And none of these are in production. And his point was, well, if you put it in production, then it kills all these people production line and they can't recoup their investment. But that doesn't happen in the communications environment. You have to your production. You can't look at 3 years, 5 years to return your money. If it ain't happening right away, you have to eat that and move on, right?
Oh yeah.
So what does digitally sovereign Bahamas actually look like? And I'm drawing on your smart city thing, and now that you're in what I call I don't want to say the capital of smart cities, but close enough.
You can say that. You can say I am in the center of global innovation and global scale. No country in the world. I say this without fear of intelligent contradiction. No country in the world besides China have a complete industrial supply chain. No country, right? No country in the world besides China also have the scale to run experiments across 1.4 billion people. This environment, Happy Knowles, is one of the most hyper competitive. The competition here is just vicious, right? If you could survive in China, when you go to other countries, you just dominate, right? Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'll give you a concrete example. So companies like Volkswagen and BMW and Mercedes and all these car companies, they come to China primarily looking for this huge 1 billion people market. What they discover is that 1 billion people market, they are broken up into small micro segments, right? So it's not as easy as you think. It's not just 1 billion people looking to buy your stuff.
Right.
But why they stay is they stay because of the innovation and the learning. So if you could compete in this market, when you go back to Germany or when you go to another market, you find, it's so easy. Awesome. And this is what we have to do in tourism. We've got to not see China as some mass market, because it's not for us. China for us is a luxury market, and we ought to be marketing the whole Bahamas in China. We ought to be marketing financial services. We ought to be marketing second home. We ought to be marketing luxury tourism. We ought to be marketing R&B investments. We ought to be marketing one Bahamas in this environment, and that way we ought to get a greater return on our investment, because phonetically, when the Chinese hear Bahamas, they don't hear Bahamas the way we hear it.
Right.
They hear Panama, because phonetically, Bahamas in their context is Panama.
Okay. Yeah, we need to fix that. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And fix it fast.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So we always talk about pausing, think about our intentional thought, and consider where we go from here, right? And so,
right. All on Dale, I don't think I answered your question on the digital thing, right? Yeah. I think we were one of the first countries with a central bank digital currency. Yeah. We designed our central bank digital currency primarily to feed our southern islands, right? Yeah. We should now think about that central bank digital currency in a broader way. We ought to make that interoperable with Nigeria's central bank digital currency, and we ought to think about how we could cooperate with other central bank digital currencies to run experiments about this digital future. Because I'm telling you, if you look at what's happening in crypto right now, The crypto industry is now 3.4 trillion. They're going to replace gold as an asset. So gold as an asset is a $17 trillion business. The crypto is at 3.45. I can guarantee you within the next 5 to 7 years, crypto will be as big as gold or bigger. And we in the Bahamas, we've got to start to think about our CBDC in a broader, more mature way. And so for the digitally, that's for us, central bank digital currency, we ought to be serious for that. Then we ought to be serious about the Bahamas as a data exchange point for North, South America and the Caribbean, and as a direct link to Africa. So, and that link should not have to go through any third-party country. We ought to create those direct links to the Bahamas. So a lot of things, our internet is in Miami. This is a problem for me. You're not going to be a serious country if your internet is in Miami.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying quite well, right? And if I tell you how long ago we proposed internet exchange in the Bahamas, you would laugh. But anyway.
I wouldn't laugh because I know you guys are the cutting edge.
Let's just say we had a longer name than 3 letters at the time. So I hope you'll give me a couple more minutes because some of these last questions here are key.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to talk to you anytime because the things that you and I are talking about, this is a conversation about the future, and this is a conversation about what's possible. And we've got to build a better Bahamas for our children and future Bahamian children.
Right, and we got to bring them up as leaders to be able to embrace it and be able to capitalize on what is being done. Because sometimes I feel why I put the quote at the beginning is that, yeah, we build things, but we build it for other people, but we don't build it for ourselves, right? So people benefit from things, but we don't benefit from it, right? Some things. So,
and I don't want to harp too much on the Chinese because in the West we have a different idea about the Chinese way. But I'll tell you something that we should take a look at with respect to China. China talks about the Chinese way. They talk about socialism with Chinese characteristics. They talk about capitalism with Chinese characteristics. They talk about democracy with Chinese characteristics. Do you know in this environment, the government is the regulator, the government is the referee, and the government is a player. Right? In our world, we just think the government should just be a regulator.
Yeah, but even though those things, they separate those things into different regions, from my understanding.
Yeah.
Right?
No, they're not so much separate in different regions. They just find a way to make it work. And we've got to do the same thing. We've got to build an economic Bahamas with Bahamian characteristics. We can't go looking around for some cookie cutter template for our country. We've got to build it from scratch.
Yeah, well, that's another quote I could give you as to what some foreign people who like MCI, if you know how far back I'm talking about, would have said,
I know MCI.
And give us credit as to saying we were doing it the right way. And I know Williams have that somewhere in his arsenal of data that he's like to store in his head, right? And we're talking about things that they couldn't fathom how the Bahamas was able to do the things we do with the little we have and the small nation and stuff. And they gave us public credit for it, right? But,
and they should. Leon Williams is arguably the best business leader we have had in the Bahamas.
Yeah, but you're more on the business side, so you would be able to say that. I know what we do on the communication side, and I'm starting to learn more about who are the movers and shakers in the other space. But what bold mindset or decisions power those leaps that we talk about? So you have said that if we've doubled GDP before post-independence and through tourism and with financial services, etc., each time we double. And so the question is, what bold mindset decisions power those leaps? Because we know you highlighted earlier the key ones, or some of the key ones, but what was the mindset behind those? And what must we do to our leaders today so we could fast track them?
Yeah, see, the mindset wasn't, it wasn't that those leaders were smart, they just paid attention to what was happening in the world. So independence was a movement in the world.
But they
so was majority rule.
Yeah.
But I mean, these were movements that you just have to pay attention to. The movement that's happening in the world right now is interoperability. The people are looking at fundamental systems, and the fundamental systems are being reset right now. What we've got to do is be careful that we don't sit on the sidelines and wait for the dust to settle, and then we go wherever the wind blows.
Right.
We've got to really pay attention to what's happening. And I can tell you just at a macro level, this is what's happening in Asia. There is a distinct pivot to Asia, not because Asia is better. There's a distinct pivot to Asia because, number one, Asia is where the things are being made. And things that are being made in Asia, they are being made at scale. The West is going to have a hell of a time trying to compete with Asia on the industrial supply chain side. I think it's going to be very difficult. And if they do, it's going to take 3 to 7 years, and it's going to be a massive investment. And I still don't see them being competitive with the East. So production has already shifted to Asia. I think that's going to stay there for a long time. We've got to pay attention to that. Also, Africa is rising. The Africans are looking at their natural resources and they're saying, look here, you manufacturers, you're not going to get this. You're not just going to be extracting resources around here. So so those two things are happening in the world right now. And then people are looking at the Europeans, who are the ones who have been setting these regulations on the financial services side. They've been setting regulations for food safety. They pretty much do a good job at that if you can influence them. And so the world is being reset fundamentally. People are asking fundamental questions, and we have to now look at those fundamental questions and ask how we can play. And so for me, right, China represents a rare opportunity where China have 14 countries that they share a border with, Dale. Can you imagine? 14 countries, including India, right? That represents 45% of the world's population and a quarter of the world's GDP. I'm talking about where you got to go on no boat.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a common border. And for us to ignore that is just, I think that's I don't know how to describe it, but we can't ignore that reality, and we can't ignore the reality of Africa. We are setting up. We've got several ambassadors there, and we are making that region important, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah. So with all of that now, right? You've spoken about turning the worldview into a strategy for the Bahamas, right? And we hopped on a lot of it from a different angles to try and help various strategic persons get a good, different perspective of it. That's what we're talking about. How does this practically show up in our policy, and what would shift if we embrace our identity as leverage?
Yeah. Oh, we have to encourage our leaders to write. One of the things that Xi Jinping does very well is he puts his thoughts on paper, and it's in the book. You want to know what he's thinking? All you gotta do is go read his book. right? It's written, right?
Okay.
Our leaders have to put their policy ideas on paper. They've got to put their vision on paper so that it's shareable. We have not had a global vision in the Bahamas. We are in the global business of tourism. We're in global business of financial services, but we have not had a global vision as a country. And we have to encourage our leaders in this election cycle to come up with a global vision that's shareable.
Right.
And I think if we, the minute you start to write, you will realize how unclear your thinking is. But if you fight through it, your thinking will be clarified. And so I'd say that's the one of the things that I think we need to really do is encourage our leaders to write that vision, because the Bahamas is just in a perfect position to be. Look here, we're in a perfect position to be any country we want to be. I'm careful now about who I compare us to, right? We're in a perfect position to be a Singapore. We're in a perfect position to be a Switzerland. We're in a perfect position to be a Monaco. We're in a perfect position to be a Dubai. But we can do these things. We can do Switzerland better than Switzerland, right? We can do it better than Monaco. We can do what the Qataris are doing. You know, the Bahamas. We just in a good spot.
Cool. Okay, I got two more questions for you. So I don't burn you out today. You envision the Bahamas as a bridge for Black sovereign wealth, right?
Right.
Black in the Bahamas, people is the majority population is Black, right?
Right.
So, what does that look like in practice, and how could it reshape our economic landscape?
Oh, that's a real tough question. In practice,
right now we're controlled by our economic landscape is controlled by a very small few, and maybe we could say that is across the world. But at least the blend otherwise isn't as sharp a drop off as it might be here.
Right, true. But we also controlled by a small elite group of Black people who are very myopic as well. So we've got to watch that as well. A lot of them look at wealth as a zero-sum game, and a lot of them have become gatekeepers for those European interests that
fed them good.
Correct. All right. And so we have this joke in my circle, my strategic circle, that a Bahamian will sell you out for house and life key in a minute, right? But that Black sovereign wealth. When you look at the wealth centers in the world, you will notice something very quickly. If you look at the Americans, that's European. You look at Europe, that's European. If you go to Asia, that's Asian. Black people, for the most part, they are not really going to be totally comfortable in those environments. When you come to the Bahamas, you could be totally comfortable as a Black person or as a person of color. And I don't want to make this racial.
Right,
but the thing is, we have a lot of wealthy Black people all over the world with no place to go.
Right.
No housing is organized for them. When they come to places like the Bahamas, they got to go to Albany, Life Key, Old Fort, Ocean Estates, or they got to go find some place in Exuma. We have got to create that middle ground for them somewhere. And I think we could do that. And we should also do that for the Caribbean and Latin America as well. See, Caribbeans have the exact same problems, So I think that's a part of our platform that we should really think about. How we talk about it may be a challenge, but we've got to find a way to talk about it. So the way the Chinese talk about some of these things, they talk about them as the global South, right? So they put the whole BRICS thing as the global South, right? We've got to find a way to talk about Africa, because Africa has been, the Bahamas has always been a triangulation spot where you had the slave trade, you had Africa, Europe and the Bahamas, right? Now you have then we switch from We fit from the Bahamas to North America. You know, the switch now for us, I think, is going to be Asia, Africa, the Bahamas.
South America.
Yeah, South America too.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of connections with South America that we could leverage. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and if you just show us that map, if you just give our policymakers that map to start to look at our south and to look across the Atlantic, you can imagine if somebody were to finance a cable that connects Africa to our region. What that would mean to the Bahamas power and global commerce, that would be the equivalent to the Panama Canal.
Gotcha. Well, you know, all these things in my book now to go explore, right? And so before I let you go, I have this serious question here, which is, if you had 60 seconds with every Caribbean leader right now, what would you urge them to do immediately and to position their nation for this new world order that you talk about? This new platform management of sorts.
Oh yeah, I would tell them to, number one, take climate change real serious. Get their infrastructure ready for real climate action, and then what they need to do is to make sure the Caribbean is integrated in terms of logistics and digital infrastructure. The Caribbean should be and could be an originating point for South America and Latin America. So if you look at South America, Latin America, and the Caribbean, that economic zone is big enough to be an originating center where whatever the Europeans do, it doesn't matter. Right. I'm not saying that we exclude them, but we should fix this so that it doesn't matter what anybody do, whether it's the Europeans or the Americans.
Well, like we talk about business continuity, right? You don't just say you're going to do one route and leave it because that's okay, you're comfortable with that, works well, etc. No, you have to have backups and you have to have alternates so that you could blend. Sometimes water running this way, you could go that way and so forth. Next thing you know, you're on the electric slide.
If we get Caribbean leaders looking at Latin America, South America, and Latin America as an economic zone, you would discover something that's just so obvious that I don't know why you don't see it. Brazil is the most important country in South America. Brazil should be the most important trading partner for every Caribbean country besides the United States.
Yeah.
And that's where they should be looking.
I can believe that. You know, Lester, I've been over the last 6 months or so or more focusing a little bit more on Lewis Hamilton, the Formula One race car, the 7-time champion. Right.
Okay.
And his struggle since he's been to Ferrari. And the more I listen to what he's saying, the more I see why he's so successful, right? Because he does things systematically, break them down. He doesn't wait. It's not long. He doesn't take time. The other day in the race, he told the guy he don't need to hear from him right now. His pit guy, right? He focusing. He's in the fight, and he's trying to position himself. He don't need a bunch of clutter coming in, but this metric is that and that, and saying this and stuff, and you're gonna pay attention. He just going for it, right? And you could see where that instinct and that leadership comes in and that desire and that passion, you know, and I think that's what we need on the scene today in order to pull together all of the things that we're talking about and make it happen. You know, every 10 years or 15 years, one might come along and some might get knocked away. But I think we overdue to have another one come soon, right? And as not Malcolm X, not Benjamin Franklin, Lincoln, you know, Lincoln said, President Abraham Lincoln said, that the philosophy in the classroom today should be the philosophy in government in the next generation, right? And so when we look at that, I believe that that philosophy is now here. We just need to find and put our fingers on the people who are thinking that way and bring them into the forefront, not just in the policymakers, but just in the whole of our scope.
I think what you're doing with just this $100 billion idea, we have a $14.5 billion economy right now. If you divide that up into 100 billion, that means we have to get 600% bigger.
Yeah.
That you need to stay on that, because 6x requires a mindset adjustment. And don't think people ain't paying attention. Some people saying it's not realistic. But I can tell you, man, I know of one country that went 600x in 20 years. So it's not 6x in 20 years. So it's not unrealistic for us to go 6x in 6 years.
But in the new built environment, we talk about the Sunshine Sea not as we know them from tourism point of view, as I highlighted in the graph earlier, the chart earlier. But I have been told by people who went to school with me, who come here and fish every year, that we have a shark industry that is worth $2 billion that the Bahamas ain't even touching into, right? Not benefiting from.
Right.
That's just from people coming here just to do stuff with sharks and what have you and stuff like that. So what if we put our heads together and make that a substantial industry? Look how big that could be, because our ocean isn't small. That's just one thing. Digital. You know me in digital. Digital is, to me, data is like black gold, so, as far as I'm concerned. Right? And in the Bahamas right now, per square mile, I've asked people to challenge this statement. There is no country in the world that I'm aware of that has more digital connectivity per square mile than the Bahamas. And everybody wants to be at every nook and cranny in the Bahamas, so that's another multiplier effect. And when you add these multipliers together, then you can have the 10x thing happening really easy. And that's why I keep telling people that my projection was only conservative, but I figured if I said 200 billion, people would now think I'm crazy.
Right.
Make it small and maybe they'll believe it.
Yeah.
But Lester, I want to thank you for taking this time, because I know it ain't easy to be 12 hours or so ahead and still functioning really and all that kind of stuff.
Man, I thank you for the invite, because when you are challenged to talk about these ideas, it causes your mind to focus, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So one thing I would ask is, before we leave though, is there anything we didn't cover that you want to put out there? Because I know you in the diplomatic space, you all have all kind of things going on that Bahamians might want to know about, that you might be able to share.
Right. Yeah. Well, you mentioned this travel thing. People should think about this. People should stop talking that stuff about travel, because number one, travel is very important, and you don't know what could happen in these meetings. You don't know. It takes one Saul Kirshner. It takes one Ismailian. It just takes one person to come and change your whole environment, right? So, diplomacy is a very important part of a $14.5 billion economy. So when you look at the travel, we are not spending enough on travel, right? So people shouldn't think about how a country operates based on their personal situation, because a country is a country. That's like people believing that business people could run a country better than actually trained government people.
Right.
Running a government is a skill. We have seen businessmen try to run country, and you've seen how that's going, right?
Right.
So people should really be careful about that. Don't look at $50-100 million in travel as some big deal. It's not a big deal. It's a tiny amount for a $14 billion economy because it's an investment. The Bahamas is a destination for tourism and foreign direct investment. When I looked at the numbers, the Bahamas is the third most important destination for offshore residency and foreign direct investment. So we should be very careful how we talk about that. Mm-hmm. Second thing I want us to really pay attention to is we want to start collecting our VAT all around the world, where people buying things, because we ought to collect our VAT, right? And I would say the number one opportunity, I think, coming from China to the Bahamas is we looking for collaborators. We looking for people who want to collaborate in AI, who want to collaborate in healthcare, because the Chinese companies are anxious to collaborate with Bahamians. They don't just want you looking on Alibaba. They want you contacting them, and let's come up with real world solutions for our problems like diabetes, high blood pressure. We get a lot of colon cancer. So there's a lot of Chinese companies who will work with you directly. We also want to look at tax compliant structures with the Chinese. So we have a tax information exchange agreement with China, but I don't know of any real financial services jurisdiction that have that have offshore tax compliant structures for Chinese investment. That's an area I think we ought to go. And then we are looking for creative people who could move stuff from China to the Bahamas, and vice versa, via sea and airplane. That is an urgent thing. So loads of opportunities exist between China and the Bahamas, and between China, Bahamas, and the rest of Latin America.
Cool. That's awesome stuff. So we gonna have to bring you back to touchdown and one or two of these areas and just drill into that specifically. And just across the board,
anytime, man. Dale, what I'd like for you to think about doing is, I'd like to have a conversation with me, you, and Gilbert Morris. Gilbert Morris has written a piece recently that I think should be read by everybody in the policy business and by every talk show host. It's called China Crucible, where he breaks down China and what's happening in the world. I think people should read that. He is right now featured in the China Daily as a rock star. People don't know that, but he is a rock star in China Daily at the moment.
Wow, yeah, cool. Well, I call him Professor. Professor is very talented, right? And
he is.
We have a little go at it every so often, which is good. It makes the mind.
And as you should, because he thinks the challenge for people to give him more sometimes is when you like 3 steps ahead of people, it's difficult, right? Now when you're like a step ahead of them, then it's easy to connect. But I enjoy your clashes.
Yeah, thank you. But thank you again, I say, and to all those out there who are doing these things, thank you all for sticking on and watching with us today. And hopefully you got some value out of this and from this good fellow here on the screen. So Lester, thank you.
Thank you, Dale.
Good. So folks, you've been watching Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and as we saw, we had Lester R. Cox on the show today, and he's situated over there in China. And what we really hope that you gain out of this is to know that hope is not lost. That we have a wealth of things. I didn't mention earlier, but I remember in 89 or 90 thereabouts, I went to USTTI course, and the professor brought out a book that showed that the Bahamas needed about 3 million people in our economy for us to be sustainable. We only have 400,000 odd citizens and whatever other visitors that come here on a sustained basis, not just the hand couple week or whatever, and so forth. And so we need to start thinking in abundance and not just this perpetual view of scarcity, because we talk about $100,000, and so that means that if somebody getting 80, that means ain't nothing for us, so we won't stop them from getting 80. No, let's think about them getting 80 and then figure out how they could leverage it so that we could get our 80 out of the balance of the 20 that's there, right? So we need to work as teams. So until next week, when we have another provocative guest, we would like to thank you for watching, and come back next week, same time, same bat channel, and we'll be in the same time zone, so we will start on time. Peace. Enjoy.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative, 242.